In a dark, empty space, a lone spotlight shines on a girl in a simple dress, sitting on a chair. This is Yukaheim, who introduces herself as Evangeline A.K. McDowell. She reveals she is a vampire who has lived for 700 years, and that immortality isn't as great as it seems, warning that it can be quite harsh. Yukaheim continues her monologue, admitting that while there are fun times along the way, surrounded by friends and loved ones, the long life of an immortal ultimately ends in solitude, as you are eventually left all on your own. As she walks alone into the sunset, Yukaheim explains the cruelty of time for an immortal. Devotion and attachment become impossible as you grow tired of the things you once loved and eventually forget everything, making it worthless to even bring up the past. Looking back at the fading figures of people she once knew, Yukaheim questions her fate. She declares this to be the story of such people, who ended up becoming trivial in the grand scheme of her unending life. The scene shifts to a peaceful countryside. A young, energetic boy with spiky black hair, Tota Kono, is sitting in a large tree. He asks his friend if he knew that jellyfish are immortal, to which his friend replies with surprise. Tota's friends, sitting with him in the tree, join the conversation. They discuss different forms of immortality, from the immortal jellyfish to tardigrades, clarifying the difference between an unlimited lifespan and true invincibility. It seems Tota got worked up over nothing. Suddenly, one of the friends alerts the group that she's here. Tota and his friends immediately get serious, peering out from the bushes with determined expressions. A woman with long blonde hair, their teacher Yukaheim, walks down the path. The boys comment that she actually came and, as usual, looks good from behind. With a close-up on his determined face, Tota declares that today will be the demon teacher's final day. He rallies his friends, shouting, "Let's go!" With a powerful war cry, Tota and his 4 friends leap out from their hiding spot, charging forward with wooden practice swords in hand, ready to attack. The 5 boys race towards Yukaheim, who continues to walk calmly down the road, seemingly unaware of the ambush about to unfold. Just as they are about to strike, Yukaheim turns with a smirk, telling them to brace themselves. Tota and his friends look shocked by her sudden reaction. Tota's attack is stopped dead in its tracks as his sword hits an invisible barrier surrounding Yukaheim, much to his and his friends' astonishment. The attack completely backfires. The boys crash into the barrier and are sent flying, while Yukaheim simply continues walking, unfazed. One of the friends is seen with a bruised face, stuck to an invisible wall. With a simple punch, Yukaheim shatters the ground and sends a shockwave toward one of her students. Yukaheim effortlessly deals with the ambush. With a flick of her hand, she sends powerful blasts of energy, repelling her students' attacks and sending them flying. The aftermath of the failed attack is clear as all the boys are seen lying defeated in a river, while Yukaheim stands on the bank, completely unharmed. The onlookers watch in the distance. Yukaheim scolds the defeated boys, questioning why she should hold back against them. In the background, onlookers comment on how amazing the teacher is, noting that her students were acting like monkeys. The scene pans to the school building, as Yukaheim mentions there seem to be some misunderstandings she needs to clear up. Inside a classroom, Yukaheim lectures the boys. She explains that while the village headman said defeating her would grant them permission to go to the capital, they are mistaken if they think that alone assures them a bright future. She points out that those who succeed usually have great talent or rich parents. Yukaheim continues her lecture, stating that the village headman's true intention is to prevent them from getting wrong ideas by making her an obstacle. The boys stand before her, wearing buckets on their heads as punishment, gritting their teeth in frustration. Yukaheim singles out Tota, asking if he really thought he could defeat her with such half-assed swordsmanship. Tota looks embarrassed and flustered by her direct criticism. The boys erupt in protest, realizing that Yukaheim used a barrier. They shout that it's the rumored magic and accuse her of being unfair for using it while keeping a secret. They demand she teach it to them. Yukaheim looks down on them with disdain, telling Tota he's too bad and that she doesn't remember raising such a miserable man. She tells him not to let his inexperience blind him and that his complaints about her being unfair are unreasonable. Declaring she has no business with insincere men, Yukiheim sends the boys flying out into the fields for punishment, 3 times the usual. Later, as she stands by the window, a fellow teacher approaches, asking if she wasn't a bit too strict with them. The conversation continues in the teacher's office. Her colleague laughs it off, saying it's unusual for the kids to be so energetic, but normal for them to dream of the city. He then gets to the point, turning to her and asking directly, "By the way, Mrs. Yukiheim, can you really use the rumored magic?" Back in the office, Yukiheim's colleague continues the conversation about magic. He finds it amazing that someone who can use magic exists in a quiet countryside like theirs, especially since the world only became aware of magic's existence 10 years ago. He notes that even though an app for normal people to use magic recently appeared, a single basic spell can cost 500,000 yen. Yukiheim adds that if it becomes more accessible, its use in criminal activities might rise. Her colleague passionately declares that this is the era of magic, and suggests that if Yukiheim could teach the kids how to use it, it would undoubtedly change their futures for the better. Yukiheim, looking tired, asks him to give her a break, wondering what evils the brats would get up to if she taught them magic. The scene then shifts to a lily placed on a gravestone, while her colleague amusingly agrees she might be right. The focus then snaps to Tota, praying fervently at the same gravesite. The scene reveals Tota at a cemetery on a hill overlooking the village. He's paying his respects at 2 graves, saying hello and reporting that he's doing fine today as well. The camera focuses on the names on the gravestones, revealing them to belong to Tota's mother and father. Below their graves is another, larger one belonging to his grandfather, Negi Springfield. As Tota stands before the graves, his friend arrives. One of them asks if he comes to pay respects every day. Another friend then hesitantly asks Tota if he still resents Mrs. Yukiheim. The other boys are confused by the question. A flashback explains the rumor. 2 years ago, Tota's parents died in a fiery car accident while on their way to the village with Yukiheim. Only Tota and Yukiheim survived. The boys speculate that Tota's daily challenges against Yukiheim are his way of getting revenge for his parents' death. The scene flashes to Yukiheim taking care of a younger Tota after the accident, as he had no other relatives. Tota immediately shuts down the rumor, calling them idiots. With a bright, sincere smile, he declares that Yukiheim is a nice girl and that he deeply respects her strength. Tota explains that since he has no memories from before the accident, he can't possibly resent her. His friends seem to understand. The group then turns their attention to the distant view of the capital, with its massive tower barely visible, and they all express their desire to go. As they look at the tower stretching into the sky, the boys discuss their true goal. For them, the capital is just a stepping stone. Tota mentions a rumor about Yukiheim coming from the top of that very tower. Tota passionately declares that their goal isn't just the tower, but to go further ahead, all the way to the other side. His friends agree, fired up by his speech and the idea of defeating Yukiheim to climb the tower. Tota smiles, saying that since he doesn't have memories from before the accident, he feels like the only thing he can do is move forward. His friends happily agree, giving him a thumbs up. Tota turns to his friends and thanks them, saying that even though he just gets beaten up by Yukiheim, the past 2 years have been fun because of them. His friends are surprised by his sudden sincerity. One of his friends playfully punches him for the embarrassing line, while the others are touched. The leader of the group tells Tota that if he doesn't have a goal, he should just make one, like becoming a manga artist or a grappling champion. With their spirits high, the 5 friends jump into the air, shouting in unison. They declare that they will never waste their lives in the countryside and that all 5 of them will definitely make it to the tower. Later, back at home, Yukiheim slides open the door, announcing her return to Tota. As soon as Yukiheim enters, Tota attempts another surprise attack, this time dropping from the ceiling. However, Yukaheim is completely unfazed, looking at him with a deadpan expression. In a flash, Yukaheim effortlessly counters his ambush, sending him spinning through the air until he lands hard on the wooden floor. The chaotic attack continues with Tota getting stepped on and hit, but Yukaheim calmly blocks his final strike with a single ruler, asking as if his efforts are trivial. Tota complains about her killing intent and the broken floor, but Yukaheim surprises him by saying it was a nice move and she was happy about it. Meanwhile, she starts cooking, completely ignoring the mess. As they settle down, Tota asks Yukaheim to teach him magic. She retorts that a little courage is true magic, and reminds him that country folk aren't idiots. Tota then starts counting his failed attempts to hit her, trying to figure out how many times he's tried. Yukaheim is momentarily surprised by his question, but then smiles gently. She tells him he's become quite good. Tota is overjoyed, asking if she's finally acknowledging him. Yukaheim tries a spoonful of the food Tota cooked, and her expression shifts as a distant memory is triggered by the familiar taste. She quietly tells him it's delicious. Oblivious to her change in mood, Tota puffs up with pride, boasting that he aims to be the best at everything because he's a growing child who needs to eat. As Yukaheim continues to eat, she watches Tota devour his meal with incredible gusto. Her gaze becomes distant, lost in thought as she recalls the tragic day that brought this energetic boy into her long, lonely life, setting the stage for a flashback. A flashback reveals the moment Yukaheim found a young Tota, crying amidst the wreckage of the accident that killed his parents. A voice pleads for her to save the child, but she looks on with a somber expression, knowing the harsh reality of the situation. The flashback continues, showing a grieving young Tota being taken in by Yukaheim, leaving the police and authorities behind. It's a quiet, sorrowful beginning to their life together. The scene transitions to a montage of their life since then. We see Tota relaxing while Yukaheim cooks, a failed cooking attempt by Tota that results in burnt food, and Yukaheim happily eating his cooking anyway, showing the development of their comfortable, familial bond. The montage continues, showcasing their daily life filled with training battles, Tota waving goodbye, embarrassing moments, and them sharing meals together, painting a picture of a chaotic but happy life. The montage concludes with a comical but intimate scene of them in the morning, with Yukaheim clinging to Tota in her sleep, much to his flustered embarrassment. Back in the present, Yukaheim asks Tota if he wants to go somewhere next Sunday. He reminds her about his club's morning practice, but she seems to have something else in mind. Yukaheim reveals her idea. She holds up a ticket to the Tuno Zoo, which she got from a village meeting. Tota is stunned into silence, a spoonful of rice halfway to his mouth. Tota gets flustered, yelling that he wanted to go to the zoo 2 years ago when he was 12, not now. He quickly thanks her for the meal and rushes off, saying he needs to make it in time for his training, leaving Yukaheim to clean up. Outside, Tota trains rigorously, swinging a heavy hammer with great effort. From the porch, Yukaheim watches him quietly, sipping her drink. Suddenly, Yukaheim's calm expression changes to one of alarm as she hears a distant explosion. She looks towards the school, realizing with annoyance that the boys are at it again. The scene shows the aftermath of another failed attempt. The boys are defeated on the ground, complaining that it's unfair they are up against magic. From a window, Yukaheim declares they don't have a 1 in a million chance of winning and are not going to the capital. As the dejected boys walk away, their other teacher, Nagumo, appears from behind a wall. He slyly asks them if they'd like to borrow his power and memorize some magic, catching Tota's attention. Nagumo demonstrates his magic, creating a small ball of fire on a stick. The other boys are amazed, exclaiming that it's real magic. Tota, however, struggles to replicate the feat, wondering why his isn't working. Tota asks Nagumo why he's secretly helping them against Yukaheim. Nagumo suggests that perhaps Yukaheim is just holding them back before releasing them, but that her methods are still brilliant because the capital is full of dangers. Nagumo cleverly twists Yukaheim's own words, quoting her adage, "A little bit of courage is the true magic." He claims he just wants to give the boys a little push in their life, manipulating them with a seemingly kind justification. Nagumo then reveals his true plan. He tells Tota there's another, surefire way to win and presents him with a simple-looking bracelet. The scene sets a sinister tone, overlooking the school at dusk. Tota is conflicted. He doesn't like the idea of such cowardly moves, but admits he's never given Yukaheim a present. He debates with himself, flashing back to all the times his friends have been beaten, before steeling his resolve and deciding to take the chance. Back at home, a blushing and nervous Tota approaches Yukaheim, stammering her name. She looks up from her book, asking what's wrong and if he's caught a cold. Stammering, Tota awkwardly presents the bracelet to Yukaheim, telling her it's a gift to thank her for everything. He quickly runs away, leaving a surprised Yukaheim holding the bracelet, wondering what's gotten into him. Yukaheim walks outside, looking at the bracelet Nagumo gave Tota. She puts it on her wrist with a slight smile, commenting on the perfect timing as if she's expecting something. The trap is sprung. As Yukaheim stands outside, two of Tota's friends suddenly appear before her, standing within glowing magic circles. The ambush is on, and Yukaheim looks on with a calm, knowing expression. In order to go to the capital, a group of friends have decided they need to defeat their teacher, Yukaheim. Two of them, a boy with light hair and a boy with glasses, use what they believe is a transportation technique to get the jump on her, combining their powers to cast a binding ivy spell. However, their teacher, a woman with long blonde hair named Yukaheim, easily breaks free from their attack. The group of friends can only watch in dismay as she effortlessly shatters their spell. Yukaheim seems impressed, asking where they got their magic from. The friends, now a group of 4, confidently declare that they're different from yesterday, boasting about their new magic apps that have supposedly made them tough. Suddenly, Yukaheim finds that her own magic won't activate. Seizing the opportunity, the friends believe they finally have their ticket to leave the village and make a run for it, shouting their destination, the capital. Their escape is cut short as one of them is struck down by an unseen force. The rest of the group stops in their tracks, their faces a mask of shock and confusion. A man in a suit now stands over the fallen students. It's their other teacher, a man with spiky black hair and glasses, who has single-handedly taken them all down. With a calm smile, the teacher looks down at his incapacitated students and thanks them for their efforts. The students are stunned as their teacher, Mr. Tachibana, reveals his true intentions. He's been waiting for a chance to act and is after the 600 million yen bounty on Yukaheim's head. Meanwhile, a boy with spiky black hair named Tota is running frantically. He seems to be the only one who doesn't understand what's happening, confused about the talk of magic and apps. Back at the confrontation, Tachibana chuckles as he summons numerous sharp rods, aiming them directly at Yukaheim, who prepares to defend herself against the surprise attack. Tachibana confirms Yukaheim's suspicion. He is a bounty hunter. After complaining about having to stay hidden for 6 months, he tells her to hurry up and die like a beautiful rose, dropping all pretense of being a friendly teacher. In a surprising move, Tachibana swings his thorny blade at himself, creating a shadowy afterimage as his real body disappears. Using the momentum from his feint, he reappears and launches a powerful strike at a stunned Yukaheim, sending Tota's friend flying. Just in the nick of time, Tota arrives on the scene, landing between Tachibana and Yukaheim. He furiously demands to know what Tachibana has done to his friends and his guardian. Fueled by rage, Tota charges forward, swinging his own sword at the bounty hunter. Tota's attack seems to pass right through Tachibana's body, which dissipates like smoke. The boy is left in disbelief as the bounty hunter seems completely unharmed. Before Tota can react, Tachibana reappears and lands a devastating blow, his hand piercing straight through the boy's chest. Tachibana stands over the fallen boy, revealing his name is Tota Kono. He lectures that in this world of survival of the fittest, Tota's tale ends here simply because he took the first step and failed. With Tota defeated, Tachibana turns his attention back to Yukaheim, raising his blade to strike her down while mocking her for being too slow and naive. Just as his attack is about to land, Yukiheim, who lies over Tota's body, catches the blade with her bare hands. Tachibana looks on in utter shock. Both Tota and Tachibana are stunned. The bounty hunter can't believe she can move, revealing that she should be completely paralyzed by a high-rank binding spell that prevents magic use. With a bead of sweat on her face, Yukiheim admits that the surprise attack from Tota's friends was actually great, giving it a passing grade. She then looks down at the injured Tota, a slight smile on her face. She tells him that, come to think of it, his attempt to protect her was the first present he's ever given her, and it made her happy. A look of dawning horror and realization crosses Tachibana's face. He understands that the power capable of overcoming his special binding spell isn't brute force, but something much stronger, a heart that wants to protect those dear to you. He asks, almost mockingly, if it's love. However, before he can continue his thought, this newfound power erupts from Yukiheim in a violent burst of dark energy, blasting him and everyone nearby. However, the blast of power wasn't enough. Tota, with his arms severed and his chest pierced, can only watch in horror, thinking to himself that his feelings don't matter at all in this situation. The aftermath is grim. Tota kneels over the motionless body of Yukiheim. They both look utterly defeated, sharing a moment of shared, silent agony. With his remaining strength, Tota reaches out a hand towards his fallen guardian, weakly calling out her name as his life begins to fade. A montage of memories flashes through Tota's mind. His desperate cries for Yukiheim are interspersed with the recent memory of her smiling, telling him his actions made her happy, just before the bounty hunter struck them both down. The scene of devastation is revealed. Tota's friends were also caught in the attack, sent flying through the air. On the ground, a crying Tota is filled with regret, blaming himself for trusting Tachibana for even a second, which led to Yukiheim getting hurt. The moment of their defeat is shown clearly. As Tota knelt to protect Yukiheim, Tachibana mercilessly ran his sword through the boy's body, striking them both in a single, fatal blow. Tachibana stands over his two victims with a cold, almost regretful expression. He states that while it feels unpleasant to kill a young man with a future, he suggests Tota should accompany Yukiheim to the other side. As his life drains away, Tota apologizes to Yukiheim and his friends for messing up. He believes he is about to die, and the world around him fades to black as Yukiheim lies motionless. In his final moments, Tota is filled with despair, lamenting that he's dying in a place like this, having never amounted to anything or being able to do anything of worth, dying as a nobody. But in the void of his fading consciousness, a voice cuts through, calling him a fool. It's Yukiheim, asking if he's really going to give up like this. Still in a state between life and death, Tota argues back with Yukiheim's voice, claiming that standing up now would make him a monster. She retorts, telling him to open his eyes and look at what's in front of him. Tota's eyes snap open, and he is shocked to see Yukiheim, also heavily bleeding and injured, gesturing for him to come towards her. Stunned that she's alive, Tota immediately tells her to call an ambulance for her injuries. But Yukiheim, with grave urgency, insists that there is no time for that. Yukiheim explains their dire situation. In just 20 seconds, Tachibana will kill their 4 friends. She reveals that only Tota can save them now. She then poses a critical question. Doesn't he find it strange that he can still talk, even though his heart was pierced? The shocking truth is revealed. Yukiheim declares that Tota is an immortal monster, thanks to a temporary permission she granted him 2 years prior. Tota is left speechless, unable to comprehend what she is saying. She lays out 2 cruel options for him. The first is to give up, do nothing, and his life will end as he turns to dust. The second is to stand up and be reborn as a true immortal monster. The choice, she says, depends entirely on him. If he truly wants to stand up, he must drink her blood. Tota is thrown into turmoil, confused and unsure of what to do in the face of this impossible decision. As he hesitates, Yukaheim looks at him intently and asks a pointed question. Was the ordinary human life he lived for the past 2 years truly comfortable? The word comfortable strikes a nerve. Tota is shaken to his core, a storm of conflicting emotions and realizations washing over him as he grapples with the truth of his existence and the choice before him. His hesitation ends. With grim resolution, Tota declares that there are no other choices for him. Calling himself an idiot for even hesitating, he leans down and licks the pool of blood from Yukaheim's wounds, accepting his fate. Meanwhile, Tachibana stands triumphantly over the unconscious bodies of Tota's 4 friends, casually cleaning his blade after having dispatched them. Smirking, Tachibana notes that the friends were an unaccounted-for variable. As he turns to leave the scene, he's stopped by a sudden, powerful presence behind him. A reborn Tota now stands before him, his fatal wounds gone and his severed arm already regenerating. With a look of pure fury, he warns the bounty hunter not to touch his friends and vows that he will not leave the village alive. An impossible sight silences the battlefield. Tachibana stares, his smug confidence shattered, while Tota's friends can only watch with wide-eyed disbelief as the boy they saw die rises to his feet, seemingly reborn from his own death. But Tota pays no mind to their shock. For the newly immortal boy, only one thought burns in his mind as he grips his sword. He must defeat this man as quickly as possible, because Yukaheim is still alive and waiting for him. The final battle begins. Without a moment's hesitation, Tota charges towards Tachibana, his only thought being to defeat the bounty hunter and save Yukaheim. Tachibana braces himself for the attack, annoyed by the boy's persistence. Tachibana unleashes a fire spell, intending to incinerate Tota on the spot. But the newly immortal boy, his arm visibly regenerating, simply slices through the fireballs with his sword, completely unfazed by the magic. Tachibana bursts into manic laughter, genuinely surprised by Tota's newfound power. Still, he remains arrogant, calling Tota a mere brat and vowing to slay him right alongside the woman he's trying to protect. The fight is short and decisive. Tachibana lunges, but Tota dodges and counters with a powerful kick that sends the bounty hunter flying backward, crashing into a vehicle. Tachibana is left stunned by the boy's overwhelming strength. As steam rises from his rapidly healing body, Tota breathes heavily but stands victorious. The immediate threat is over. Sometime later, with police and medics at the scene, Tota wakes up in Yukaheim's lap. He frantically checks his body, amazed that he didn't die from his injuries. Yukaheim looks down at him and grimly states that he did, in fact, die. As Tota's friends are treated for their injuries, Yukaheim tells him to be proud, as his power is what saved them. However, her expression turns somber as she takes the blame, admitting she is responsible for everything that happened. She then reveals her true identity. Her name is Evangeline A.K. McDowell, a vampire who has been living for 700 years. Yukaheim confesses that it was her own selfishness that led to her involving Tota in her cursed existence when he was very young, much to his surprise. She elaborates, explaining that 2 years ago, she turned him into an immortal demon according to his parents' dying wish. She apologizes, admitting she dragged him into her eternal curse out of a selfish desire to keep him safe. Tota, however, reacts with surprising optimism. He asks why she's apologizing, exclaiming that immortality is great and something everyone wants. Yukaheim sadly counters that while many think that the reality of eternal life is truly horrible. Annoyed by her sad and gentle apology, Tota gives her a light headbutt, startling her. He tells her to stop apologizing with such a sweet face and to just preach at him with her usual confidence. Then, his tone softens, and he admits that he's actually glad that she is immortal. With a gentle, relieved smile, Tota confesses that knowing she was still alive after the battle was a huge relief and that it made him genuinely happy. As they begin to walk away, his friends shout out to him, overjoyed that he's awake but also demanding an explanation. Tota tells Yukaheim that even though he has friends now, she is the only one he can truly call family. Looking at her with a bright, sincere smile, Tota tells her that as long as he's together with her, the prospect of living an eternal life doesn't seem so bad after all. His friends rush over and playfully dogpile him in celebration. Watching the heartwarming reunion, a touched Yukaheim allows herself a small, content smile. Sometime later, Tota and Yukaheim stand on a road leading out of the village, saying their goodbyes to his friends. Yukaheim explains that with her identity exposed, they can't stay. The friends jokingly call Tota a coward for getting to go to the capital first, but their tone is full of envy and support. His friends promise they will catch up to him eventually and tell him to meet them in front of the tower. With a final wave, Tota agrees, and he and Yukaheim set off on their journey. Their destination is the sprawling metropolis of New Tokyo, dominated by the massive orbital elevator known as Aminomi Hashira City. As they walk toward their future, Tota waves one last farewell to the home he's leaving behind. On their way to the capital, an excited Tota exclaims his desire to go to the tower. Yukaheim clarifies, asking if he means the Japanese orbital elevator, the Aminomi Hashira. Tota enthusiastically confirms, declaring that it's their shared dream. Yukaheim, ever the pragmatist, dryly informs him that a ticket to ride it costs about 400,000 yen. Tota is floored, shouting that something so expensive isn't a dream, it's a luxury. Their journey has just begun, but the path ahead is filled with both passion and peril. The scene opens with Kono Tota and Yukaheim locked in a dynamic training session. They lunge at each other with intensity, their blades clashing in a flurry of movement, clearly a regular and vigorous routine for the two. As the spar continues, Yukaheim unleashes a swift attack. Tota barely manages to block it, a look of complete shock on his face as he questions the nature of the powerful blow he just deflected. Their blades meet again in a fierce clash. Yukaheim observes her student's tenacity, noting internally that the other 4 kids from the village could never have reached this level of skill, acknowledging Tota's superior potential. Yukaheim changes her tactics, executing a low kick that catches Tota off guard, sending him stumbling. As he falls, she keenly observes his form, noticing he's instinctively using a proper technique. Though knocked back by the force of the attack, Tota displays incredible agility, recovering his balance mid-air. Yukaheim watches with a pleased smile, impressed by his excellent reflexes. In a surprising turn of events, Tota manages to land a clean hit on Yukaheim, who lets out a cry of pain as the blow connects. The exchange ends with Tota being decisively thrown to the ground. Yukaheim stands over him, looking calm and thoughtful, confirming to herself that the boy indeed has a natural talent for martial arts. After the fight, they stand on a cliffside. Yukaheim admits to using a barrier, justifying it as a counter. She then offers to teach Tota a real move, which she calls quick move, but he seems hesitant. To Yukaheim's utter shock, Tota flatly rejects her offer. He explains that his only goal was to become strong enough to defeat her so he could leave the village, and now that he's accomplished that, he sees no reason to continue. Tota looks forward with a determined smile, clarifying that he doesn't really care about just getting stronger. He has a dream that's much bigger than simply leaving his village. The scene shifts to Tota and Yukaheim on a paved road, finally on their journey away from the village. They are running toward their new destination as Yukaheim sings a playful, nonsensical song. Tota excitedly reveals his grand ambition, to go to the capital and climb the orbital elevator tower. He wants to get famous. Yukaheim listens, amused by his. Tota elaborates that this dream is a promise he made with his friends. He points to the sky, vowing to fly high, even higher than the towering structure in the distance, calling it their everlasting vow. A flashback panel shows Tota with his group of friends from the village. He declares that this bond with his friends is so important that not even becoming an immortal monster will make him give up on their shared dream. Yukaheim questions the vague nature of his dream, asking what high and far really mean. Tota starts to explain, but gets flustered and quickly backpedals, telling her to never mind. Yukihime playfully grabs Tota, teasing him for blushing. He becomes flustered, protesting that it's embarrassing to say out loud, especially after only becoming an immortal vampire last week, while she retorts she's been alive for 700 years. The conversation takes a serious turn when Tota asks if he can still attend school. Yukihime coldly informs him that since his growth is now stunted at the appearance of a 12-year-old, he will be a squirt forever. This new reality horrifies Tota, who immediately panics about whether his voice will ever change. Tota's panic escalates into a full-blown existential crisis. He frantically asks if he'll ever go bald, gain weight, get wrinkles, or even have body odor. Yukihime, annoyed, yells that these things are impossible now. He'll be like this for his entire life. The terrible reality of his situation crashes down on Tota. He screams in despair, realizing that his voice won't change, he won't grow, and he'll never physically mature. The thought that this dreadful immortality will ruin his dream shatters his world. Yukihime watches Tota cry, remarking that this is simply the reality of being an immortal monster. While she doesn't understand why his dream would be broken, she offers to personally train him, given his natural aptitude for martial arts. Suddenly, Tota bolts, running down the road and screaming at the top of his lungs that immortality can go suck it, leaving a surprised Yukihime calling after him. Yukihime watches him run off, musing that his hatred of immortality is just like him. As Tota walks ahead, dejected, he laments that it's only the first day of their journey, and his dream already feels crushed. As he walks, Tota's attention is caught by something in the distance. He spots a village, noting with some surprise that it seems even more rural and isolated than the one he just left. Upon arriving, Tota and Yukihime are immediately confronted by a group of local kids. The children aggressively tell them they aren't welcome and that they're trespassing on their spot, leaving Tota confused by the hostile reception. He then notices that the bullies are ganging up on another person. The kids escalate their harassment, shouting insults and calling the person an outsider. This finally pushes Tota over the edge. His expression darkens with anger as he clenches his fists and menacingly asks the brats what the hell they think they're doing. After chasing off the bullies, Tota turns to their target, a quiet person with short black hair named Kuramaru Tokasaka, and asks if they're okay. Kuramaru, however, seems ungrateful, telling Tota they shouldn't have bothered. The conversation quickly devolves into a silly argument when Kuramaru calls Tota a shorty, much to Tota's annoyance. Kuramaru's attention is then drawn to a rusty, old motorbike lying abandoned in the grass, surrounded by a set of tools. Tota excitedly explains that he found the motorbike and is trying to fix it, enthusiastically asking Kuramaru for help. Kuramaru initially ignores him, but then gives a deadpan stare when Tota gets too close, causing the immortal boy to fluster and back off. As Tota begins working on the engine, he mentions he learned a thing or two from a mechanic friend. The group of bullies, who had previously been hostile, now watch in amazement at Tota's skill, impressed that he might actually be able to fix the old bike. Even Yukihime watches on with curiosity. While they work, Tota asks Kuramaru why the village kids have a problem with him. Kuramaru explains that it's because they're always talking about leaving and climbing the tower. Hearing this, Tota gets excited, realizing they have the exact same dream. Tota relates to Kuramaru's situation, noting that the older folks in his own village didn't like people who wanted to leave either. Kumo, who left their own village a week ago, is touched by this understanding and asks if they can call to Big Boss Bro. With a final adjustment, the motorbike's engine sputters to life. Tota proudly announces that it's fixed. Kuramaru sits on the bike, amazed that it's actually working, and gives it a test rev. Tota beams with pride as the crowd of kids, who were once his antagonists, now cheer in amazement. He then gestures for them to come closer, and they all gather around, their previous animosity forgotten. Kuramaru watches, blushing slightly at the positive attention. The scene has completely turned around. The bullies are now happily checking out the fixed motorbike with Kuramu, all of them united in their excitement. Tota and Yukiheim stand back and watch the newfound peace. Kuramaru takes the motorbike for a spin, racing across the grassy field with a look of pure joy and freedom on their face. Inspired by the moment, Kuramaru performs a daring jump over a large rock, impressing the cheering crowd of kids who watch in awe. The kids are ecstatic, shouting about how cool the jump was. Yukiheim gives Tota a nod of approval for his good work. As the excitement dies down, Tota and Kuramaru look on as the kids run off, the tension now completely gone. Now that they're properly acquainted, Tota realizes he never got the other's name. The traveler introduces himself as Shinobu Yuki. After they formally introduce each other, Tota asks what Shinobu plans to do after leaving the village, besides climbing the tower. Shinobu asks Tota if he's ever seen the Neo Olympics, an event held once every 8 years at the very top of the tower, way up in space. Tota confidently replies that of course he has. Tota gets carried away, explaining with grandeur that the Solar Olympics is the greatest event in history, lasting for half a year and drawing 30 million people. Shinobu reveals that their dream is to participate in the week-long Grand Solar Race. Tota throws his arms wide, declaring it's a great dream and that the more impossible it seems, the better the dream is. The local kids, however, overhear this and start mocking them, calling it impossible. Tota immediately gets furious and dares them to make fun of Shinobu's dream again. Shinobu stops him, saying their dream is pretty funny. Tota calms down, then smiles and reveals that he also has a friend who wants to go to the Neo Olympics. His friend's dream is to sing. Tota paints a picture of his friend's dream, to sing in the legendary hall at the tower during the Neo Olympics closing ceremony for an audience of 10 million people, with the entire Earth as his backdrop. Tota then cheerfully adds that one of his own dreams is to be a backup singer for his friend. The reveal is so goofy that the crowd of kids burst out laughing, while Yukiheim and Shinobu look on, completely baffled. The kids mock them relentlessly, laughing at the sheer impossibility of going to the Olympics. Shinobu tries to get Tota's attention, but he just smiles, saying he doesn't care what they think because his friend is amazing. The kids continue their ridicule, claiming that singing at the Olympics is an even more impossible dream. Shinobu grows pensive, admitting to Tota that there is some truth to what they're saying, as most dreams fail and require great sacrifice. Tota agrees they have a point, but believes everyone is entitled to their own opinion. He then recalls a man he knew, suggesting it might be easier to live quietly in the country than in the cutthroat world of the capital. Shinobu shares a personal story about an important man from their past, a cargo ship pilot who wanted to race. He would occasionally visit, telling stories of the outside world that Shinobu loved and promised that one day they would meet at the top of the tower. Shinobu quietly admits they haven't heard from the pilot since, and that the villagers all bet he died somewhere. The bullies immediately seize on this vulnerability, accusing Shinobu of making it all up and calling them a braggart. They then taunt Tota, daring him to sing if he's so confident in his friend's dream. Provoked by the mockery of his and his friend's dreams, Tota's demeanor changes. He doesn't sing, but instead unleashes a powerful roar, shouting the words, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow." The sheer force of his voice stuns the bullies into silence, leaving Shinobu completely surprised. Tota continues his speech, finishing the quote, "Learn as if you were to live forever." He gives a thumbs up and explains with a smile that a friend taught him those words, which were originally from a famous Indian figure. He then admits that it's true he has nothing. He's not smart, has no talent, money, parents, or even memories from before he was 12. However, he reflects that he does have 4 friends and a teacher whom he respects a great deal. With a determined look, he explains that because he started with nothing, he has spent the last 2 years living by that philosophy, learning every last thing he could. His words captivate the crowd, including Yukiheim and the local kids. Changing the subject, Tota stands on a large rock as if it were a stage. He announces that one of his friends also taught him how to sing, and that he's about to perform a song that will blow their minds. Shinobu and Yukiheim exchange worried glances. Tota takes a deep, dramatic breath, closing his eyes as he prepares to unleash his song upon the unsuspecting audience. He lets out a powerful, deafening scream, a far cry from anything resembling a melody, as he begins his song. As the sound begins, Shinobu seems to be the only one who appreciates it, thinking to himself with a blush that it's like hearing a heavenly voice. The sound that Tota produces is so unbelievably awful that it physically knocks the entire crowd of local kids off their feet, sending them flying backwards. The bullies get back on their feet, furious. They yell at Tota, asking if that was even a song and calling him a tone-deaf con artist. Tota just laughs it off, shouting back that it's called practice and to just imagine how good it'll be down the road. Tota continues to boast, claiming his song has complex elements and will be even better once his voice changes. Shinobu thinks he's weird but endearing. This boasting, however, is the last straw for the bullies, who start angrily chasing them. Just as he mentions his voice changing, Tota freezes. He remembers that he's immortal and his voice will never change. He collapses in a fit of despair, allowing the angry mob to catch up and continue chasing him and Shinobu, who are now trying to flee on the motorbike. The chase becomes chaotic as Tota frantically clings to the back of the motorbike while Shinobu drives, with the angry bullies hot on their heels. As they speed away, Shinobu looks back in panic and spots a cliff just ahead. In the confusion of the chase, Shinobu had gotten on the bike first, leaving Tota to jump on behind, leading them straight toward the edge. Tota yells in panic as Shinobu loses control of the motorbike, sending both of them flying helplessly over the edge of the cliff. The motorbike crashes against the sharp rocks below and explodes, while Tota and Shinobu plummet towards the water. From the cliff top, the bullies watch in horror, screaming that there's no way they could have survived the fall. Down below, amidst the smoking wreckage, Tota lies on the ground and calls out to Shinobu. Shinobu coughs, having landed safely on top of Tota. Though Tota notes he can still feel pain, he is otherwise unharmed. Shinobu, blushing from the close proximity, realizes that immortality has its good points, as it makes saving lives easier. The crowd above shouts in relief, realizing they're alive. Tota checks on Shinobu, apologizing for the loss of the bike. As he gets up, completely healed, Shinobu is amazed to see that their own pain has vanished and apologizes for the crash. Shinobu correctly identifies the song Tota attempted as Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World, noting its fame as a wake-up call during early space development. Impressed by Tota's spirit, Shinobu tells him he's got real fire and guts, which leaves Tota flustered. Inspired by Shinobu's own story, Tota repeats the promise from the pilot. One day, when you catch up to me, I'll see you atop that tower, kid. Shinobu looks up at him, stunned and emotional. Moved to tears by his words, Shinobu shouts a heartfelt yes. Just then, Yukiheim's boots step into the frame as she remarks that if it weren't for his reckless immortality, Tota would have been a goner. Yukiheim makes her appearance, asking who the new kid is. Shinobu is shocked, wondering how she got there. Yukiheim simply states that it's pathetic he can't recognize her, and that her sudden appearance is just magic. With a wicked laugh, Yukiheim transforms into her older, teacher-like form, startling Shinobu. She gloats that she saw everything and explains away her transformation as a special age-changing magic pill, which only terrifies Shinobu more. Having made peace, Tota and his new friend Shinobu wave a cheerful goodbye to the local kids. With mutual promises to meet again, the group leaves the small village behind and continues their journey on foot. Sometime later, as they cross a long bridge, Yukiheim brings up Tota's earlier despair, asking why his voice needs to change to sing like Louis Armstrong. Tota explains his true, simple dream, to become famous, grow old, and drink with his friends. His grand method for achieving this fame is just by doing something huge. Hearing this, Yukiheim bluntly tells him that after 3 years, she's finally concluded he's a complete idiot. As they continue their journey on foot, Tota complains that the massive tower in the distance doesn't seem to be getting any closer. He asks Yukaheim why they're walking, and she explains that using public transport will be a bloodbath due to the risk of being attacked by bounty hunters. Unfazed, Tota quickly pivots back to his cheerful goal of making 100 friends in the capital. He then thinks of his new friend Shinobu, resolving to visit their village someday. But Yukaheim coldly tells him to give up. Yukaheim gives him a grim reminder of their nature, asking if he's forgotten that they are immortal. She warns him that even if he is able to make friends, he is just going to end up regretting it. Tota brushes off her negativity, saying he'd never regret it. Spotting a waterfall near a service area, he decides to take a break and a shower. As he runs off, Yukaheim gives him one last warning to be careful of bounty hunters and their anti-mortal countermeasures, which could lead to a fate worse than death. While enjoying the refreshing water, Tota's mood turns somber. He floats on his back, lamenting the fact that his friend from the village will grow up and change, while he is destined to stay a child forever. Suddenly, another person lands on top of him in the water. In the confusion, Tota's hands land on something they shouldn't, and he looks up in surprise. He finds himself face to face with a stranger with long black hair, who is clearly shocked and mortified by the awkward situation. The stranger quickly shoves him away. As they scramble to get up, Tota immediately apologizes for the mishap. Without a word, the stranger draws a sword and unleashes an incredibly fast slash attack. The blow cuts through the water, narrowly missing Tota, who is stunned by the person's incredible speed. Standing defensively with their sword drawn, the mysterious stranger angrily demands to know who Tota is. Still in the water, Tota looks at his attacker and comes to a startling conclusion. He's fighting a girl. He immediately drops his guard and apologizes for peeking. Enraged by his comment, the sword wielder shouts, "Who's a girl?" and delivers a powerful kick directly to Tota's face. After getting dressed, Tota apologizes again, explaining his mistake by saying his attacker has such a beautiful face that he was sure they were a girl. The person, a boy named Komaru Tokisaka, blushes angrily as Tota tries to calm him down while they walk along a road. Komaru argues that the disgust would be natural for anyone, boy or girl, if a total stranger groped them like that. Tota continues to laugh it off, saying he already apologized and didn't expect anyone else to be in such a remote area. As they walk, Komu, who identifies Tota as a foreigner, asks if all of Japan is like this now, noting the villages they've seen are like ghost towns. Tota explains that Japan has been plagued by ghost towns lately, as most people now live in the capital, leaving only weirdos and ruined freaks in the countryside. Kuramaru then formally introduces himself as Kuramaru Tokisaka, stating that it's the first time someone his age has ever been able to avert his sword. Tota introduces himself in return, complimenting Kuramaru on how amazing he is. Recognizing a kindred spirit, he suggests they be friends, and they shake on it. Tota can't help but get close to Kuramaru again, still marveling at his feminine features and thinking he really does look like a girl. Flustered, Kuramaru threatens to hit him if he doesn't stop, warning that a serious blow could kill him. Tota is shocked to learn that Kuramaru also came from space from the top of the tower. Overcome with excitement at finding someone with a similar background, he grabs Kuramaru's hands and begs to be his friend. Tota passionately declares that it's his promise to his friends to become famous in space, reinforcing their shared dream. Yukaheim watches them, commenting that friends and promises are great. Tota enthusiastically agrees, giving a thumbs up and saying that he and Kuramaru already get along so well. Kuramaru, though calling Tota annoying, seems to be warming up to his new, weird friend. Kuramaru suddenly bursts into laughter, admitting that Tota is a real weirdo. Tota, proud of his success, turns to Yukaheim and boasts about how easy it was to make a new friend. As they sit and talk, Tota learns that Kuramaru came down from space because he's looking for someone. He explains that he's not allowed to set foot back in his hometown until he finds that person and finishes his job. Kuramaru asks about Tota's traveling companion. Tota proudly points to the woman sitting nearby, giving her full name. Evangeline A.K. McDowell, a tall woman with silver hair and blue eyes. The name causes a flicker of recognition and suspicion to cross Kuramaru's face. Kuramaru's suspicion turns to shock, confirming the woman is the Eva he's heard of. His eyes dart to the large glass window of the bus stop behind them. His blood runs cold. He's not just looking at the space where Yukaheim should be, but at Tota's as well. With dawning horror, he realizes that neither of them casts a reflection. A wide shot confirms Kuramaru's terrifying discovery. In the glass reflection of the bus stop, only Kuramaru is visible. Tota, who is standing right beside him, is completely absent, proving that he, too, is not human. Tota, completely oblivious, cheerfully asks Kuramaru what's wrong. But his new friend's demeanor has turned dark and serious. With his hair shadowing his eyes, Kuramaru reveals his true identity. He is from an exorcist clan known as the Immortal Hunters. Ku rises to his feet, his friendly attitude gone. He declares that it is his sacred duty to put unnatural beings and enemies to mankind back into the darkness. Tota, shocked and confused, asks what he's talking about, still worried about his friend. For a brief moment, Kuramaru expresses genuine regret, admitting that he felt he could have truly been friends with Tota. But his duty is absolute. He lunges forward to attack, ignoring Tota's desperate pleas for him to wait. With a determined cry, Kuramaru unleashes his clan's secret technique, the stone-cutting sword. The blade glows with immense power as he brings it down on the defenseless Tota. But at the very last second, Yukaheim appears between them. With impossible speed and grace, she blocks Kuramaru's ultimate attack with just the tip of her own slender blade, stopping the fatal blow completely. Yukaheim calmly holds off the attack, a nostalgic look on her face as she recognizes his fighting style, the Shin Maryu. Tota shouts her name in shock, while Kuramaru is stunned that his attack was stopped, leaving the three locked in a tense standoff as the chapter comes to a dramatic close. A man in a bird-like mask gives an order to a long-haired individual named Kuramaru Tokisaka. The mission is clear: to slay Evangeline A.K. McDowell. The scene reveals that Kuramaru is being exiled from their clan for failing their mission. The clan leader states that while Evangeline was once feared as the Dark Evangel, she is now a mere shadow of her former self. For failing to defeat such an opponent, Kuramaru is deemed unfit for the clan and is cast out, told to take their cursed body and rot away. Other clan members comment on the decision, seeing it as a way to get rid of the troublesome Kuramaru. In the present, Yukaheim effortlessly throws Kuramaru, sending them flying into a roadside sign. Tota Kono, her companion, screams Kuramaru's name in shock and terror at the sudden violence. Tota panics, screaming at Yukaheim that she just killed someone. He looks on in horror at Kuramaru's motionless body, which has a large, bloody wound. Yukaheim, however, remains calm and simply tells him to take a closer look. To Tota's utter disbelief, the gaping wound on Kuramaru's body heals in an instant, leaving no trace of injury. He stares in shock, asking what's going on, while Yukaheim calmly confirms that what he saw is exactly what happened. Tota rushes to Kuramaru's side, relieved that they are still alive. Meanwhile, Yukaheim watches with a thoughtful expression, realizing that their opponents have sent an immortal to hunt other immortals. Just as Tota is checking on them, Kuramaru, with an infuriated expression, sits up and delivers a powerful smack across Tota's face, asking what he thinks he's doing. The reason for the slap becomes clear. Tota was checking if Kuramaru was male or female. A flustered and blushing Kuramaru shouts at him, while Tota looks on, stunned. Yukaheim steps in, grabbing Kuramaru and digging her heel into their head, apologizing for her improperly educated young ward. Still blushing and embarrassed, Kuramaru draws their sword, pointing it towards a surprised Tota, and begins to speak with hesitation. Kuramaru declares that they have no choice but to kill both Tota and the woman, Evangeline A.K. McDowell. Down below, Tota protests, saying the fight is just getting started and that the previous engagement didn't count. Yukiheim intervenes, making a proposal. She tells Kuramaru that if they can defeat her disciple, Tota, then she will face them. Tota is outraged that she is deciding things by herself, while Kuramaru looks on thoughtfully. Apologizing to Tota, Kuramaru accepts the terms and points their sword at him, demanding that he fight them. Tota looks shocked as Kuramaru makes a plea. Tota tries to de-escalate the situation, asking Kuramaru to hold on so they can talk things out. But in a flash, Kuramaru vanishes, moving with incredible speed. Kuramaru reappears in an instant, delivering a swift and powerful kick to Tota's face, sending him flying backward and crashing into a concrete structure. As he crashes, Tota recalls a secret technique, the Shinmei Ryu, and uses it to absorb the impact, much to his own surprise and relief. The fight continues. Kuramaru attacks with their evil cutting sword, but Tota manages to deflect the blade with his bare hand, much to Kuramaru's astonishment. Tota thinks about how strong his opponent is. Kuramaru analyzes Tota's movements, recognizing his immense strength and the high-speed shundo technique he used. Tota tries to talk again, but Kuramaru charges forward, calling him useless and attacking with a fierce sword slash. In a split-second exchange, both combatants analyze each other. Kuramaru is frustrated that they couldn't see Tota's movement, while Tota notes that his opponent dodged again with a random movement and has plenty of reason to fight seriously. Tota suddenly stops and makes a proposition. They will fight seriously, but with one condition. The loser has to obey whatever the winner says. Kuramaru is taken aback by this strange offer. With a wide, cheerful grin, Tota explains that fighting a battle with nothing in it for him sounds dumb, and that running away is his specialty. Seeing his point, Kuramaru accepts the condition. Now with a reason to fight, Tota readies himself. Kuramaru, seeing his opponent's resolve, also gets serious, throwing away their scabbard and noting that Tota has thrown his advantage away. The battle resumes with renewed intensity. Kuramaru charges forward, and their blades clash in a flurry of motion. Realizing he can't win in a sword fight, Tota decides to close the gap and keep pressuring his opponent. They engage in a fierce, close-quarters exchange of blows. In a decisive moment, Kuramaru's blade finds its mark, slashing across Tota's chest and drawing blood. Kuramaru is momentarily surprised by an unorthodox move from Tota involving his shoe, creating a slight opening. Ignoring the slash to his chest, Tota capitalizes on the opening and lands a solid punch squarely on Kuramaru's face. From the sidelines, Yukiheim watches with a satisfied smile, impressed by the raw skill of both fighters. The close-quarters battle rages on, with Tota and Kuramaru locked in a flurry of attacks and parries. The impact of their blows sends shockwaves through the air. Tota realizes he's outmatched in a direct confrontation and decides to use a technique Yukiheim taught him. Kuramaru, meanwhile, is impressed by Tota's raw fighting instincts, even though he clearly lacks formal combat experience. Believing he has the upper hand, Kuramaru lunges forward for a final strike, declaring that this is the end. Apologizing to Tota, he swings his sword with the intent to decapitate him, believing that will stop him even if he's a vampire. But in a bizarre turn of events, Tota stops the deadly blade not with a weapon, but by sticking a small piece of paper to his forehead. With a wink and a smile, he declares that unfortunately, the victory is his. Using the split-second distraction, Tota lands a devastating punch, sending Kuramaru flying and crashing into the ground, ending the fight decisively. Lying defeated on a shattered ground, Kuramaru begs Tota to kill him instantly. Tota, however, refuses, stating he won't kill him. Instead, after a moment of thought and looking at his newly healed hand, he cheerfully makes his demand, "Become my friend." Sometime later, the new trio walks along a path. Tota is cheerfully singing, with Yukiheim walking beside him, while a sullen Kuramaru trails far behind. Tota calls out to Kuramaru, asking why he's walking so far behind since they are now buddies. A flustered Kuramaru retorts that he is an immortal hunter and they are immortals, making them incompatible natural enemies. Tota confidently holds up the paper he used to block the sword, revealing it to be a best friends for life contract, signed by both him and Kuramaru Tokisaka. He declares that their status as natural enemies is meaningless in the face of this contract, much to Kuramaru's frustration. Yukiheim laughs, remarking that getting new companions is a good sign. As the three walk off together, a mortified Kuramaru wonders how things ended up this way, while Tota smugly recalls the terms of their agreement. Yukiheim tells Kuramaru that since he is now friends with her disciple, she has lost all intent to kill him. She says he is free to leave if he finds it hard to stay. Kuramaru quietly admits that he has nowhere to return to. Kuramaru explains that he was told if he failed his mission, he should not return and should just go die somewhere. Yukiheim bluntly states that his mission was impossible to begin with, and that in any case he was beaten by her disciple, so he cannot return. Yukiheim then makes a surprising offer, asking a blushing and wide-eyed Kuramaru if he will become her disciple. Kuramaru can only respond with a stunned. Tota is overjoyed by the idea, celebrating that they are now fellow disciples and calling Kuramaru bro. Kuramaru, completely overwhelmed, protests that Tota is now his junior disciple and wonders what is wrong with these people, while Yukiheim muses that the boring training might finally get interesting. As the trio continues their journey, they notice more people around and soon arrive at a bustling hot springs town nestled along a river. Yukiheim suggests they stay at an inn for the night, which she agrees sounds good. Tota and Kuramaru are ecstatic at the thought of using the hot springs, though Tota briefly worries if they have enough money. Yukiheim mischievously suggests that since Tota and Kuramaru are both guys, they should get naked and spend some quality time together. Both boys are shocked by the suggestion, and as they walk towards the inn, Kung desperately tries to correct her. Later, at the men's spa, Tota is already relaxing in the completely empty outdoor bath. He calls out to Kuramaru, who is hesitating at the entrance, telling him how great it feels and asking why he's so slow. Kuramaru enters, shyly trying to cover their naked body, which appears distinctly feminine. A confused Tota asks what's wrong, while Kuramaru pleads for him to stop staring, explaining that it's not a custom in their country. Seeing his chance, Tota demands proof that Kuramaru is actually a girl. Despite the initial awkwardness, both of them end up relaxing in the large hot spring. Tota cheerfully says, "Told you so," as Kuramaru sinks into the water, admitting it feels great and reflecting on how many years it's been since they felt this calm. While relaxing, Tota asks about Kuramaru's clan, curious after everything he's heard. He comments that it's not normal for a clan to tell its members to go and die if they fail a mission. Tota questions why Kuramaru would even need to go back to a place like that. He then looks at him with a warm smile, holds out his hand, and invites Kuramaru to come with them. With a wide, sincere, and slightly blushing smile, Tota gives his reason for the invitation. We're all immortal anyway. Tota continues to hold his hand out, encouraging a flustered Kuramaru to join their group. When Kuramaru hesitates, Tota points out they are buddies because of the contract. Overwhelmed by his simple, earnest logic, Kuramaru can only splash water in frustration. Kuramaru tries to explain that their situation isn't so simple, but gives up and sinks into the water in silent frustration. Tota, unfazed, calls him depressing and says, "Leave me alone," but then flashes a wide, cheerful grin, completely misunderstanding the serious mood. Tota gets a sudden, mischievous idea and suggests they go peek at the women's bath, since Yukiheim should be there. Kuramaru is horrified by the suggestion, especially since the women's bath is located on top of a high cliff, but Tota insists it's a normal thing to do at a hot spring. Tota reassures Kuramaru that he's not actually interested in peeking, despite his earlier comments. The conversation shifts as Kuramaru, reminded of Yukiheim, asks if she's truly the legendary Evangeline, questioning why such a powerful figure would offer to make him her disciple. Kuramaru explains that if she's the real deal, She was once widely feared as one of the strongest magi in the world, known by titles like the Dark Evangel and the Doll Master. A nonplussed Tota compares her to a video game boss, like something out of Castlevania. Tota questions whether Yukaheim is truly that powerful, arguing that she doesn't give off an overpowered feeling, though Kuramaru reminds him they both lost to her in a single hit. Suddenly, a booming, maniacal laugh echoes from above, startling them. Yukaheim appears on the cliff edge above them, wrapped in a towel. With a triumphant laugh, she calls them out, asking if they dare to doubt her true strength and inviting them to come and peek. Yukaheim issues a challenge. If they can't get her bath towel off, they won't be able to see her naked body. Tota, fired up by the exciting challenge, eagerly accepts and tries to rally a hesitant Kuramaru to join him. Without a moment's hesitation, Tota leaps into action, charging towards the cliff and jumping into the air, yelling, "I've got you now," as he flies towards Yukaheim. With a calm expression, Yukaheim simply points her finger and chants a spell, Nivis Casis. A massive explosion of ice erupts, blasting Tota out of the air. She casually mentions that she's never shown him this before. Tota is sent flying by the immense magical power. Realizing this is her ancient magic, he and Kuramaru are blown back as the cliffside erupts. Kuramaru watches in awe, recognizing that Yukaheim must be the real deal after witnessing such insane power. As they are both sent flying, Tota grabs onto a terrified Kuramaru, cheerfully saying, "Just what I'd expect of my friend." A blushing Kuramaru protests, but adds that since they are bound by the contract, they have no choice but to help. At Tota's command, Kuramaru throws him with all their might. Using his towel as a whip, Tota launches himself towards Yukaheim, aiming to unveil her charming body. The towel whips forward and successfully snags Yukaheim's own towel, pulling it away from her body and leaving her completely exposed and shocked. Tota triumphantly declares their victory. Back in the water, Yukaheim, now covering herself, concedes that he's become pretty good and that a promise is a promise, so she can show him a little. Tota cheekily waves his hand, saying he's good and that naked grannies aren't really his thing. Annoyed, Yukaheim grabs his head and dunks him underwater, saying he won't understand a mature woman's allure until he experiences it himself. Seeing Tota getting dunked, Kuramaru can't help but burst into laughter. Tota notices and takes their hand, remarking that they finally laugh the way they did when they first met. A blushing Kuramaru, realizing there's no way out of their contract, finally relents. They agree that for now, there's nothing they can do, and so they will be this friend thing of his. After getting dressed, Tota insists Kuramaru call him by his first name. The scene flashes back to the bath, where Tota, still curious about Kuramaru's gender, tries to pull off their towel to check if they're a girl. With their hair now tied in twin tails, Kuramaru shows a newfound resolve. Clenching their fist, they call out to Tota and say, "Okay, let's go." The group prepares to continue their journey. Kuramaru formally bows to Yukaheim, asking her to please take care of them as her disciple. Yukaheim agrees, offering to spar with them anytime. Before she can finish, Tota excitedly declares a race to a nearby overpass, dragging Kuramaru along as Yukaheim notes they aren't listening. As Tota and Kuramaru run ahead, Tota suggests Kuramaru should meet his other four buddies sometime. Kuramaru glumly points out that, thanks to Tota, they no longer have a goal in life. Tota cheekily offers a new goal for Kuramaru, accompany him in realizing his dream. When asked what that is, Tota proudly declares he wants to go to space and become famous. Kuramaru immediately tells him that's no good at all, demanding he think things through properly. Admitting he has nothing, Tota ponders for a moment before asking Yukaheim if there are other immortal people in the world aside from them. A light bulb goes off for Tota. With a confident thumbs up, he proposes a new plan that surprises both Yukaheim and Kuramaru. He's going to gather up lots and lots of immortal buddies. In front of a silhouetted lineup of diverse and powerful-looking figures, Tota declares with wide-eyed excitement that he will make a team, an immortal family. Tota explains his thought process. At first, he thought being immortal was a drag, but he realized it could be very useful for saving people. He concludes that if they gather a ton of immortal people together, they could do some pretty amazing things. Tota continues, saying it would be a huge waste not to use such an amazing power to make a difference. Kuramaru reflects on their own cursed body, while Yukiheim starts laughing, remarking that she should have expected as much from Tota, but notes that not many people use their immortality for the sake of the world. Suddenly, a black car comes speeding down the highway directly towards them, forcing the trio to leap out of the way in surprise. As the car screeches to a halt, a well-dressed man with spiky blonde hair steps out and bows, enthusiastically greeting Madame Yukiheim. Behind him, a massive convoy of identical black cars pulls up, stunning Tota. An army of men in black suits emerges from the cars, rolls out a long red carpet, and bows in perfect unison, welcoming Madame Yukiheim and announcing they have come to pick her up. Tota and Kuramaru can only stare in utter disbelief at the extravagant display. Standing proudly on the red carpet, flanked by her loyal followers, Yukiheim gestures grandly and introduces the organization she created, UQ Holder, this family of immortals. Tota is completely shocked, immediately thinking they look like the Yakuza, though he admits they seem cool. He is then amazed to learn from Yukiheim that all of the men gathered are partially immortal. The blonde man explains that within the group, there are the aristocrats, the true immortals. He clarifies that this refers to people like himself and Yukiheim, vampires. He continues his explanation, listing the various kinds of immortals whose power rivals that of vampires. Those who use holy wine or philosopher's stones, gods, demons, monsters, and even those who achieved it through scientific cyberization. The list goes on with even more inexplicable types. Those who are cursed and unable to die by a twist of fate, those who reincarnate when they die, those with a stock of extra lives, and even those with the ability to set a save point. Yukiheim confirms that the list pretty much sums it up. Kuramaru, looking concerned, asks if this includes bodily modifications, and Yukiheim confirms that as well. Kuramaru is distressed, realizing that all of these people are enemies of their clan. Tota, on the other hand, is ecstatic. He winks, showing a fong, and declares that this sounds incredibly interesting and that he wants to become buddies with all of them. Now riding in the back of a luxurious limousine, Tota is amazed at the speed, complaining about why they had been walking the whole time. He eagerly tells Kuramaru he's itching to meet the other immortals, while Yukiheim reminds him she is not a Yakuza head. The limo arrives at a dock, and Yukiheim explains they will be taking a boat from here on. Tota is surprised, but looks up to see their destination. A massive tower is now visible in the distance. As they sail across the water, Tota and Kuramaru marvel at the immense tower, which is the UQ Holder's hideout located off the coast of New Tokyo. They can't believe how huge it is as they get closer. They arrive at the hideout, an incredible and sprawling Japanese-style complex built on its own island, complete with a hot springs inn. The blonde man welcomes them to the terminus of the immortals. Yukiheim addresses her assembled followers, announcing her return after a tough 2 years. She declares that she will be doing things her way from now on and asks them to stick with her in fighting for their clan of darkness. Her followers cheer in agreement. The men in suits ecstatically mob Yukiheim, shouting how much they've missed her and vowing to protect her. Watching from the side, Tota finds the chaotic scene of devotion cute. Wanting to join in on the fun, Tota tries to introduce himself to the group, but he is immediately shoved aside by 2 large bodyguards who tell the brat to get lost. Before the bodyguards can do more, Kuramaru flies in with a powerful kick, sending them flying. Standing atop a stone lantern, Kuramaru angrily declares that they are Yukiheim's #1 disciple, and everyone should listen up. Tota jumps in front of the crowd, introducing himself as Tota Kono. He then points to Kuramaru, calling them his girly boy mate, and declares that they will all be comrades from that day onwards. The crowd is unimpressed. The blonde man, Visego, steps forward, calmly questioning when anyone ever said they would become comrades. He addresses Tota as a promising boy and a guest of Mistress Yukaheim, but another man named Mr. Jingara tells Visego that's enough. A very tall, imposing man wearing glasses and a bartender's apron steps forward. He introduces himself as Jingara Macabe and gestures to the two people with him, a young man with glasses named Ikuameya and a young woman with a hammer named Karen. In a close-up shot, the three of them, Karen, Jingara, and Iku, stare intently at Tota and calmly state, "We're immortals. Nice to meet you." Tota is thrilled, shaking Jingara's hand and asking if they're vampires too. He's especially excited to see Karen, noting she looks about the same age. Karen, however, just gives him an intense, unnerving death glare. Startled by Karen's intense killing intent and her grip on her hammer, Tota wonders if he did something wrong. Jingara ignores the hostility and addresses Tota and Komo, stating that since they wish to become one of them and are Yukaheim's underlings, there's no room for doubt. Tota cheerfully says he wants to be buddies with them, asking to become one of them. Jingara calmly explains that UQ Holder has a specific qualification test for immortals, which is based on an urban legend about an unescapable labyrinth beneath the capital. Jingara holds up his hand and states the simple, yet daunting, condition of the test. If you can escape within 8 years, you pass. Before Tota or Komaru can even process the absurd time frame, a trapdoor opens directly beneath their feet, revealing a dark pit below. As they start to fall, Karen smacks both of them with her massive hammer, sending them hurtling down into the darkness below as they scream in shock and terror. After a long fall, Tota and Kuramaru land in a vast, dark cavern. Tota shouts into the darkness, asking if anyone is there and if Kuramaru is all right. They check on each other, confirming they're not seriously injured, though the fall hurt. Kuramaru laments what a disaster their situation has become, but Tota cheerfully pats their head, saying it's all good since they were going to stick with him anyway. Nearby, Yukaheim sighs, questioning if Tota ever thinks things through and calling him too carefree. Pondering the 8 years time frame, Tota and Kuramaru debate whether the test could actually take that long. Tota dismisses it as a joke, believing they can scout the whole cavern in a few days, and eagerly sets off to find an exit. As they venture deeper into the cavern, Yukaheim suddenly tells them to stop. They notice something large and monstrous moving in the darkness ahead. Tota wonders if the creature is a shark or a crocodile, but Yukaheim says she'll handle it. Suddenly, a mysterious voice from a nearby rock warns them not to kill it, as it will call its friends. The voice adds that being eaten by it is a fate worse than death, as it takes 30 years to digest, which even an immortal would feel. The mysterious figure, a man in a large straw hat smoking a cigarette, casually introduces himself as Jinbei Shido, the leader of UQ Holder. He then nonchalantly asks if they have anything to eat or a spot of fire. While Kuramaru is shocked that this man is the leader, Tota is completely unfazed. He cheerfully waves and asks, "Who are you, Gramps?"